Okay, so when you hear that word millionaire, what's the first image that, snaps into your head? Is it like a fancy sports car, a huge mansion, maybe designer clothes everywhere?
Yeah, I think most people, probably myself included, we conjure up something, well, pretty flashy.
Exactly. But what if that picture, that whole idea is just wrong?
Well, that common stereotypes, that's exactly what we're diving into today. We're tackling this really groundbreaking book from back in '96.
Right.
The Millionaire Next Door by Stanley and William Danko. It's like a classic in personal finance. Really peeled back the curtain on how American millionaires actually live.
Yeah, a foundational text. And our mission, really, for this deep dive is to pull out the most important stuff from, over 20 years of research in that book, the really surprising insights. We want to show how most millionaires in the U.S. truly live, how they built that wealth. And spoiler alert, it's less about getting rich quick.
Oh, much less.
And way more about building wealth that actually lasts, through smart, consistent habits. So let's get into it.
Okay, so the first big takeaway, right off the bat, it just completely flips that image you mentioned. The book's core idea is that real millionaires, they're almost certainly not who you think they are.
Meaning
they're definitely not the ones wearing all the latest designer gear, driving those brand new luxury cars, or throwing crazy parties every weekend.
Okay, so if they're not the ones, flaunting it, then who are these people? Who are the actual millionaires living next door?
Often, they're your neighbors. Could be the small business owner down the street,
right,
or just quiet professionals you might not even notice. People who manage their money incredibly well, but without any fuss. And what's maybe even more surprising, a huge chunk of them are first-generation rich.
Meaning they didn't inherit it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
They didn't inherit it. They built it themselves from scratch. And this finding, it's backed by a ton of data in the book. It just completely challenges that myth that wealth is mostly just passed down.
Oh, that's a huge point right there. So, okay, if they didn't inherit it and they're not splashing cash around on fancy lifestyles, how are these quiet millionaires actually building up their wealth? What are they doing?
Well, the secret isn't some, complicated investment trick. It's something far more maybe boring, but powerful.
Which is?
Just relentless discipline. Imagine someone tracking every single dollar, living way, way below their means.
Right.
To a degree that would probably shock a lot of high earners.
Yeah.
And just religiously investing.
Yeah.
Year in, year out. For decades.
Okay.
And they really prioritize avoiding debt, especially consumer debt. They see that as just like a wealth killer. So building wealth, the way they experience it, it's not about luck or some big windfall. It's just the steady outcome of smart, persistent money management, discipline, planning, patience.
It's such a common idea, though, isn't it? You earn a lot, you must be wealthy. But the book really pushes back on that. What did they find about that link, or maybe the lack of a link, between high income and actual wealth?
Yeah, this brings up a really critical distinction. And the book uses these two terms to clarify it. PAWs and UAWs.
PAWs and UAWs. Okay.
Right. A PAW is a prodigious accumulator of wealth. These are the folks who live frugally. They save a really high percentage of what they earn, and they quietly build up serious wealth. It doesn't even matter that much what their income level is, relatively speaking.
Got it. And the UAWs?
They're the underaccumulators of wealth. These are often the people earning big bucks, but they spend almost all of it chasing that high-status lifestyle. The big house, a fancy car, the vacations. So they end up with very little true net worth.
Even with a high income?
Even with a high income. And that's the key. The real millionaires focus on net worth, what they own minus what they owe. Not just the paycheck. Income is just one part of the equation. What you do with it, well, that's everything.
That distinction is really eye-opening. And speaking of what people do with their money, especially wealthy people, the book talks about something called economic outpatient care. Kind of a strange term.
It is a bit, yeah.
It's basically parents giving a lot of financial help to their adult kids, right? The book asks, does this actually help them, or does it hurt them in the long run?
Well, if you connect it back to the bigger picture of how these millionaires operate, the research consistently showed that many wealthy parents actually don't just shower their kids with money.
Really?
Yeah. Instead, they focus really hard on teaching them things like discipline, the value of hard work, personal responsibility. The goal is to make them financially independent, not dependent. They seem to understand that just handing out cash all the time, even though it feels helpful,
Sure.
can actually stop a child from developing their own ability to build wealth and, handle life's challenges.
That makes sense. Okay, another thing that really jumped out at me from the book was how many of these millionaires are self-employed.
Yes, that's a big one.
And it's not always the, glamorous tech startup CEOs either, is it?
No, definitely not. The book gives these great specific examples. Often they own businesses that might sound kind of dull,
Like what?
like plumbing services, welding shops, maybe pest control companies, things like that.
Okay, practical stuff.
Very practical,
Yeah.
essential services. And these folks, they really seem to enjoy the control they have, control over their income, their time, their future. They're focused on building long-term value in their business, not just climbing a corporate ladder.
Right, building something tangible. Okay, so they're disciplined savers, often smart business owners. What about education? We always hear get a good education, get a fancy degree, that's the path to wealth. What did Stanley and Danko find there?
Well, this might surprise you too. Education is important, valuable, no doubt. But the book makes it clear that many millionaires didn't necessarily have PhDs from Ivy League schools. Instead, they possess something the authors call financial intelligence.
Financial intelligence, different from book smarts.
Exactly. It's presented as a separate thing. It's about practical wisdom, maybe street smarts, common sense when it comes to money, how to manage it, how to invest it, how to make it grow. It's more about how you apply knowledge, not just how many degrees you have on the wall.
Got it. Practical application over just theory. Okay, so if we try and pull all this amazing research together, what are the main things, the core traits these real-life millionaires in the book seem to share? What did they all have in common?
Okay, well, consistently, they are frugal, highly disciplined.
Right, the discipline again.
Absolutely. They're long-term planners.
Yeah.
They actively fight against lifestyle inflation.
That's a thing where you spend more just because you earn more, right?
Precisely. They avoid that trap.
Yeah.
It's also really common to find them driving used cars, clipping coupons,
Yeah.
diligently tracking their spending.
Wow.
And crucially, they started investing early, and they did it regularly. Consistency was their superpower. These are the common threads, these quiet, almost invisible habits that over time build serious wealth.
And it really all boils down to that famous quote from the book, doesn't it? It sums up everything we've just talked about. Wealth is what you accumulate, not what you spend.
That quote.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's basically the entire philosophy of the book in one sentence. It just draws this incredibly clear, vital line between accumulating wealth, building assets, building net worth, and just consumption, which is spending your income.
Yep.
It's the fundamental truth about how the truly wealthy live and build their fortunes. Often, like the title says, right next door.
Yeah, this deep dive into the Millionaire Next Door is really, it's eye-opening, it's data-driven, and it still feels so relevant today.
Totally timeless.
It just completely smashes that idea that wealth automatically means luxury. Instead, it shows, real millionaires are often practical, disciplined, financially smart people. It's not about some secret trick or getting lucky. It's more like a realistic, almost low-key guide to building wealth that lasts, based on habits, based on values. We'd really recommend digging into this, or at least these ideas, if you're seeking financial independence. Doesn't matter if you're young, just starting out, or maybe raising a family or building a business.
Or just anyone who wants to be more intentional with their money.
Exactly. It applies across the board.
So maybe as we wrap up, here's something for you, the listener, to think about. If the path to wealth really is about what you accumulate, not what you spend, what's maybe one small, quiet habit you could start building? Something you could start today that might just surprise everyone, maybe even yourself, with where you end up financially, years down the line.